Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fourth episode of the KNIME101 webinar series. Today, we are talking about the power of flow variables. So, flow variables are parameters that you can use in your workflow, or to parameterize your workflow, actually. And you can use them to automate workflow execution, or you can use them to automatically change node configurations, so in your node settings. So I would say with this topic, we are kind of reaching a demarcation point, because being able to handle flow variables and being able to use them in your workflow or in your workflow building really brings you one step closer to becoming a KNIME Pro. So yeah, I'm really excited about the topic of today's webinar. Today, our two guests or mentors are Marcel Halti and Bertolt Balázs. So welcome and thanks for coming. The two of them are actually based in Hungary, in Budapest, and they made it all the way to Constance. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, thanks for coming. So yeah, both of you are both really good, advanced, long-time KNIME users. So Marcel, he's a very proficient KNIME user. Marcel, you are currently working as a business analyst and a software engineer at Microm. And also in the past, you have been involved with a lot of migrations from Alteryx to KNIME. So I would say you really know a lot of these things, and especially in and around KNIME a lot. And Bertolt is also a very long-time proficient KNIME user. He's a consultant at IFWA Horvath. And what I really like to share is that Bertolt decided to participate in the Just KNIME It challenges last year in the season 3 of the Just KNIME It. So what is Just KNIME It? Those are weekly challenges we are hosting throughout the year, where each week you can solve a new challenge. And well, those challenges, they tackle all kind of different topics, but all of them have the same goal: to make you becoming a real KNIME Pro. And Bertolt did that. And what he did in the next step was to decide to participate in the Game of Nodes challenge. So he did not do it all by himself. He convinced his friends, Marcel and Gabor, and the three of them formed a team in the Game of Nodes challenge, where the finale we hosted at the KNIME Summit just in this March. Your team name, I really liked it, but I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. So your team name was the Dothraki Data Horde. Yeah. I really like that. And yeah, even though you did not win the first place, you were still awarded the KNIME Committee's Choice Award, which we handed out as a special prize to award the actually most beautiful and most elegant solution that was submitted throughout the Game of Nodes challenge. And yeah, I think with that being said, I'm handing the stage over to the two of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, for the introduction. First of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this one-on-one session. And also thanks, KNIME, for inviting us. As being said, we are going to talk about flow variables. Flow variables basically are parameters which allow you to change certain node settings or the workflow behavior when you run it. So it will unleash the full power of KNIME and make you to use as less manual adjustments as possible. If I want to be really straightforward, if you open the settings window of a KNIME node, you can override every settings with flow variables. So Bertolt, please show the data and introduce the use case that we prepared for the audience today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Marta. So before diving deep into the power of flow variables, let me introduce you the example data set that we will be working on. So we have this data set from Kaggle. It's a public data set, and this workflow lives in my public community hub. So we have the link for that and for the Kaggle dataset, and we will share with you the link in the chat. So let's get back to the data. So we have this Kaggle dataset from sales, and it has information about sales in different cities with various products in different months. So to be exact, this is our dataset. It has 55,000 rows, more than 55,000 rows. It has 5 columns, and namely, it has the sales column, which is our most important column. We want to analyze that. It has the order ID, which identifies one order. We have the city column, which has where the sale happened. We have the product column and the month column, where when did the sale happen. If I click on the filter button, we can see that there are several cities in this dataset, to be exact 9, and several products in this dataset, to be exact 19, and the months going from 1 to 12, of course. So what is the problem that we want to solve? We want to filter this dataset for the best selling product. How to achieve that? Let me just scroll down. So first, let me define which product is the best selling product of our dataset. We will use the group by node for that. We will group by the sales, the sum of sales by product. So we will see what product, what sales generated regarding that product. So we have this 19 product here with the sales number. And after I sort the sales number by descending order, we will see the MacBook Pro laptop is the best selling product in the dataset. So let me just copy that, Control C, grab a connection from the CSV reader, put a row filter there, and configure it, double click at the criterion, and we would like to filter the product column to be equals to MacBook Pro laptop. After I click OK and run the node, I will see that more than 1,000 rows retained with the best-selling product, the MacBook Pro laptop, just in the product column. So this is the way, but it's very manual, very tedious, and not so professional. So maybe, Marty, would you know any method to enhance that workflow?
Yeah, of course. So basically, what usually would happen that every month you go into your data and filter it to that month. So yeah, you have to do it over and over again. And as we said, we can just overwrite node settings with flow variables. So let's just see how to do that. I already prepared a variable creator here. One thing is that you can see that there are certain types of output ports here. So for the data or the table outputs, you see this black triangle. But if you see a red dot, it's going to be the flow variables. So what I did here already, I created a variable name called product, and I just copied there the variable name. I mean, the actual value of the variable. And if I just connect it here, I mean, like the flow variable connections is most of the time going to be in the top of your node. And I can just go there and exchange the flow variable to that, and it's going to be. But is it manual? Yes, because I just created the variable. So this is not going to be a good option for us. But if I see that this is already sorted, I already have the value that I need for that. There is a certain node that you can just put here. It's called the table row to variable. Oops. If you open the configuration window, you can select which columns you want to include as variables. And in this case, always the top choice, I mean, the top row gonna be transformed into a variable. So now we select product. we run it, and you see, I mean, like it's a flow variable one node, so you're gonna see it here. But for the other nodes, if you click on the flow variables tab, you will see the created variables. And now I'm just gonna connect it to the row filter, and yeah, as you see, it's already overwritten by the flow variable. So anytime if you run this workflow, it's going to be sort the top choice, I mean the top selling product, create it as a flow variable, and it will automate the settings of the row filter.
Sorry, Marty, just one addition. If you configure the row filter node, you will see that, configure it, you will see that the MacBook Pro laptop is grayed out.
Oh yeah.
Because you cannot write it yourself. It's overwritten by the flow variable that comes from that port.
Yeah. So let's just create another example for that. So let's just move it a bit up. And what if I want to sort my data by cities? So I'm just gonna, and no, don't worry about that. It's gonna be a look messy. But if you go to Bertolt space, it's gonna be all the tidy and with the annotations. So you can check that if you download the workflow. So let me connect the data here, and what we are going to change here is we are not interested in the product, but we are interested to sort based on the city. And just run it. And now it's going to be sorted by sales as in the previous one. Just run it. And also I'm going to create, I mean, like make it as a variable. Table row to variable. Let's double click again. And now just exchange the product to city. And what happens if I try to connect that one here? Whoops, it's not gonna work, but no worries. We have and also a node for that. It's called merge variables. And with that, I mean, basically you can connect as many as you want, but now we just need two. And with that, you're gonna see that we have the city and the product as well. So just connect that port to the row filter, add a new criterion. It's gonna be city equals, and overwrite it with a flow variable, which gonna be the city. And now we get it as San Francisco. And if we run the node, it's gonna be filtered by city and by the product. But
and one addition to here, that every node from the branch has the same flow variables. So flow variables flow, so to say. So Marty is on the row filter node, but if he clicks on the flow variables tab, you will see that the product flow variable and the city flow variable flowed into the row filter node, and will flow through the next node and the next node and the next node.
yeah, and this is one use case when you have to filter it based on city and by the product. But Bertolt, do you know any solution when we can just change between the two filtering options?
Yeah, I think know about them, but you have to use switches for them. And what are, wow, how do I do that? Sorry, just 1 second. Yeah, so you have to use switches for that. What are switches? These are conditional construct. So you can say if that happens, go in that branch, and if that not happens, go into the other branch. So it's like an if statement in an Excel, if you know more about that. And how can you use them in KNIME? You can use the case switch node for that, or KNIME has the if switch node as well. I will use the case switch for now. What happens with the case switch node? You see that one port is active and the other port is deactivated. So it will just run one branch and not the other. But how can I define what branch to run? If I configure this node, it's a very simple configuration. You can just set one thing, which should be the active port. So the active port is 0 now. The 0 is the first port, the top port. And if I want the last port, the bottom port, the second port to be active, I should change that to 1. If I do that, the second port will be active. But remember what Marty said at the beginning. Whatever you see on the configuration of a node, you can parameterize it with a flow variable. So we will do that. We will parameterize 0 or 1 regarding the product, regarding the column we want to choose. So I prepared the configuration node, a component here. If I configure it, you can see that we can choose the product or the city for the basis of the aggregation. So if I choose product, then I can see what it does if I run this component. It will create two variables. The group is product, and the group index is 0. If I change that to city and run that component, the group is city, and the group index is 1. So we can use this group index to parameterize the K-switch start node. Let's just do that. If I double-click that for the configuration, you can see for some settings, there is this V button here in the all UI. And if I click that, you will see something very similar to what Marty showed. I click on the use variable tick mark, and I want to use the group index flow variable. Click OK. So now it's parameterized. Let's just see that. If I click that, so I will do the aggregation based on city. The second port is activated, and I can see that this port is deactivated. So we will sum it by city, sort it, and put it into a variable. You will see here the biggest city is San Francisco. But if I change that to product, then the top port is activated, the bottom port is deactivated, and if I run that, you will see that the biggest product is MacBook Pro laptop. So that's, I think, the basic use cases for flow variables, but it can do much more. It can do, for example, storing your credentials for you. And I pass the virtual ball to Marty.
Before I jump to the credentials, I see the similar case when, which with my use case, that I see two table row, two variable nodes. Can I merge them with the same node with the merge variable nodes?
Not with the merge variable nodes, because I will show what happens if I try to do that with the merge variable node. I will put the deactivated node branch here. And you see that the merge variable node is deactivated because it cannot handle inactive branches. You should use the case end node. And one tip, so if you press Ctrl and dot, you have the node repository, and you do not have to click here for the nodes. So I put case and there, case switch end. Let's just add some port to it. I want it to be a flow variable port. And if I connect them, you can see that the variables flow because the case switch end node can handle inactive branches as well. So credentials.
Yeah, so let's jump to the next use case of, next part of using flow variables. To keep the context, what we did here is we connected to Hugging Face, used an LLM, and prompted it to create a header for our report. But what is important here is that credentials that you just type in, so your username and password, passed to an authenticator node. Basically, this is just for Hugging Face, but we also use it for KNIME Authenticator, for also for database connections. So it's going to be the same for all of them. So what is happening? You enter your password and username, and it's as a flow variable, passing it to an authenticator node.
Yeah, Martel, I have a, sorry, I just say Marty. So I have one question here. So if I have the credentials saved in my workflow, and I save that workflow, and someone else opens that workflow, do they know they can access my credentials in
No,
there?
that's a good one. As you can see here, now the password is not provided, but if it would be there, you can see the username, and for the password, it would be the same as when you enter your password in a website. So basically, it's going to be just bold dots, so you can't see anyone's passwords.
And one additional node for the KNIME Hub Authenticator and DB connector node, the Excel reader node, because if the Excel is a password protected file, then you can use the credentials to pass that to the Excel reader, so you have the credentials to open that Excel.
Yeah. I think we can all agree that we don't really like manuality. So, Bertel, do you have any examples maybe that we can save time on?
Yeah, I have, and I think that this is the most time saver feature of flow variables, so to say. So let's imagine this scenario. In this data set, there is a column city, and every city has a regional manager. So Atlanta regional manager, Austin regional manager, Boston regional manager. You want to send them this data set, but just the filtered version for their city. For example, Atlanta's regional manager should get this data set, but filtered for just the city. And how could you do that? You can do that the bare manual way. So open the CSV, filter that, and save that as an Excel. That's one. And open again, filter for the other city, save that, and that's two. And you can do that 9 times. But if you have 1,000 cities or values, that's very manual and very time consuming and very tedious. You can do that one level up in KNIME, that you have certain row filter nodes, and that's more good. But if something happens with the data set in the next month, a new city is added until to the end of the data set, then it's not good because you have to do that manually. So you have to use a loop for that. And what is a loop? Loop are the blue nodes here in KNIME. So now highlighted the group loop start node and the variable loop end node. And between these two nodes, there is the loop body. And the loop body will get executed over and over again in a condition which is defined in the loop start node or in the loop end node. So in this use case, what I just said, that we want to filter a big table, a group loop start node would be work best because it just does what I want it to do. So if I execute the group loop start node, you can see that in the first iteration, it is filtered just for Atlanta, just for one city. And I want to write it out as an Excel file, but I do not want that the second iteration would overwrite that Excel file. So I should do some configuration with flow variables. What's important about loops, if I click on the flow variables tab, it will create 3 flow variables for me. A group and a group identifier, which is like an encrypted version of the city, a city variable, which is very useful for us because we know in which city the iteration is getting to, and a current iteration, how many iteration did the loop run. So I can use the city variable into the create 5 folder variables node, because in this node, I will define where to write that Excel file. If I double click to configure it, you have to set the base location, the folder where you want to write your files. It's right now relative to the current workflow to this folder, and this is that folder you can see there. So this node will create a path to Excel named location type variable, which write to this folder the flow variable Excel. But what is this flow variable? And you can see here a warning, the path values parameter is controlled by a variable. Because I said that this value, the name of the file, should be overwritten by the city flow variable. But how can I see that? In this old UI, there is a flow variables tab. And in this flow variable tabs, you can see every configuration of the node. So if I click here, I can see that the path values is overwritten by the city flow variable. And if I hover over city, it will just show me that currently it's Atlanta. I do not see it on the screen, but I hover over it again. Okay, so for me, it can be seen, and I think that in your computer, it can be seen that the city is currently Atlanta. So this is what I want. I click OK, I click execute, and I can see that it's created a variable, path to Excel, relative to the current KNIME workflow, and it's pointing to this folder and to this file. You can pass this to the Excel writer node, and if you execute it, it runs. And if I click, I open this folder, I can see the Atlanta Excel there. So one thing, if I click execute on the loop and node, it will execute all the iterations we want in the loop. So I click that, and you can see that the second iteration has started. After that, the third iteration has started. And if I click on the group loop start node, you will see the screen flickering, because you will see that this iteration does the filtering dynamically. And it stopped at Seattle because that is our last city. And I reset that node and run the loop end one more time, because I want to show you what happens with the 5 folder variables. You can see that the path to Excel variable is changing to Boston, to Dallas, and so forth. So you automatize the write out of the Excel files, and you do not have to do that manually, even if you have 1,000 unique values there. And if I click the refresh here, you will see all the Excels. And we prepared one more example. How can you tidy up your workflow? How can you control your workflow, the flow variables with the configuration node and the widget node? Marty?
Yeah, if you attended the last 101 session with Martin, you can remember he talked about data apps, so I don't really want to go into the details of that too much. But basically, the widget and the configuration nodes surprise using flow variables. So for example, if I go into the city filtering, you can see you have a selection of flow variables. If I enter this component, you can see it's a value selection configuration, which is passing the list of the cities that you can select, and it's passed as a flow variable to the row filter. So based on what you select on the configuration window, it will pass that flow variable, as it now is selected Boston, to the row filter, and it will be filtered on that city. So another thing, it's going to be the visualization. You can see here that it has a title. So the sales by month, Boston, and based on the phone. And here you can select the product. And if you choose another product, it will overwrite that setting. And it's also because of it is controlled by flow variables. So trust me, when you start to use them and start getting more into more details with KNIME, you will pretty much get to a spot and pretty soon where you can just throw like thousands of nodes into a workflow, but how you can keep them tidy and how you can keep your variables local. If you go into a component, there is a component output. I mean, this is the end output part of the component. And if you click there, you can basically select filtered flow variables. For some reason, it's not happening right now, but it doesn't matter. It would be there.
Because it's not connected.
Okay, it's not connected.
Not,
All right.
not connected.
Oh, sorry.
Here is.
All right. Okay, but also you can do that within the components with the component output, like here. Here is the city selection is selected, but there is a new node for that, which is the variable filter, where you can select the cities and include or exclude your flow variables and keep your workflow tidy. So that was what we prepared for today. And Lisa, do we have any questions?
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Bertel. Thanks, Marcel, for this super useful topic. I think flow variables, once you get the hang of it, you really see how powerful they can be. So yeah, thanks already for your presentation. Yeah, let me check. There are certainly some questions. So when you create a flow variable in a KNIME workflow, is this variable available in all different workflow branches, or how do you access the different variables?
It depends.
So as I said, answer, it depends.
As I mentioned, you can filter them within the components or with the variable filter. So based on what you filtered, it's going to be available in the later branches. But if you have like two parallel branches, as I showed, the same way that you connected to the configuration of a node, so like on the top of it, you can connect as an output port, the flow variable, and connect it to the other branch. And that way you can pass flow variables between branches.
Nice. All right. So there's another question. So someone wants to know, how can I make sure? So you're writing a file. How can I make sure that the previous file writing is completed before the next writing starts?
I think that's for you, Marcel.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have parallel branches which is writing to the same Excel, which happens a lot of times, they might can get confused with each other if they are running at the same time. But the same way as I mentioned before, as you pass the flow variables between two branches, that connection can be used to basically workflow control. And if they are connected together in the top of that branches, the second node will wait until the first one is finished. So basically, you can sequence them after each other, and they will wait basically after each other when it's finished the writing.
I see. All right. And I mean, we have seen how to override node settings with flow variables, but is there also a way how you can control when you have, like, for example, different toggles in a configuration window? So if it's like an either or, like a include or exclude toggle, we have that in some node configurations. Can you also control such things through flow variables? And if yes, how?
I will answer that, I think.
Right.
So yeah, of course you can. And the way is that you can see in every node setting what is the official thing that button or the checkbox wants. So for a checkbox, it's officially or usually a Boolean value. So it waits for a true or false value. And if it's true, then it's ticked. And if it's not, if it's false, then it's not ticked. And you can check every cell or everything in the configuration of a node, what it produces. So you can check and you can control that.
Nice. That's certainly quite powerful feature, I would say. All right. Okay, there are more questions. The next one is more of a best practice question, and I think this is a really good question because I'm sometimes wondering that myself. So would you say, or just a question to you, what do you think is better practice? Is it better to create many flow variables and then merge them together, or to merge the data first and then convert all the flow, like all the variables into flow variables? Sure.
You're not gonna like my answer.
It
Depends.
depends.
Yeah, it depends. Okay.
I see.
I have an answer for that also. Yeah. Should I?
Go on.
Oh, okay. So I think better if you have the flow variables created, then merge them together. Because flow variable is just one value. A table is a lot of values. And if you merge together a big data set with a big data set, it would be very memory consuming. And if you just have the littler data set and the littler data set and convert the first rows or something to a flow variable and merge them, is just two values.
I see. Yeah, this sounds like a good answer to me, but I also like the it depends answer. All right. Let's see what else we have for questions here. So there was another question which is related to components. I mean, we know that flow variables that are created inside a component are by default just for, well, staying inside a component. So if you want to output a flow variable or input a flow variable to a component, how could you create a flow variable input port or output port?
I think it's simpler if we just show that, because we can talk about that, but I think it would be simpler.
Yes. Yeah.
So I will just share my screen. Okay. And now if you click on that plus icon, you can say that you want an output port, not a table, but a flow variable. And after that, in the component, you have to connect the two nodes you want the flow variables to pass on. So like this. So we could talk about that, but I think it was best to show that.
Yeah. I agree. All right. So there's another question: how to learn more about flow variables. I think I can answer this question as well. So if you want to learn more about flow variables, what I can say, what we offer from the KNIME side is, for example, flow variables, the topic, it is covered in the L2 learning, in the L2 courses we have, or on the level 2 of our different KNIME courses. So if you go to knime.com/learning, you see all the different learning paths we have. And I think in all of the learning paths, flow variables are covered in the L2 training. So I can really recommend that. We have those as self-paced courses as well. So you can just sign up and study that yourself. Additionally, I think YouTube is a great resource, the KNIME TV. And of course, also examples or threads on the KNIME forum. Do you have any preferred KNIME learning source?
For me, it's the KNIME Learn Upon.
Learn Upon, yeah, the
Yes.
self-paced courses.
Yeah,
we
the
have.
self-paced courses, I think they are
The
very
Learn
good.
Upon, yes. In the early days, I used Knime TV a lot. But what I can just suggest is just open the AP and play around with it.
Yes.
You get that practice. You can find a lot of example workflows on the community hub. So just download a few, check what is going on.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool that you can play around with KNIME. So you can try that out. You can download it for free. You can install it and use it and try that out yourself. And that is, I think, the best learning path.
Yeah. I certainly agree with this last point, which I also always say a lot in the courses. Like with flow variable, it's a concept. It becomes clear when you actually execute it and see. For example, with this overriding a row filter with a flow variable setting, it's so much easier to comprehend when you just see it in the output. So
Exactly.
I totally agree with that. So also Community Hub, I didn't mention the sources, but you find a lot of not only examples, but also just more, let's say, advanced or sophisticated workflows from other KNIME users from the community that use flow variables. So Yeah, I think once you are aware of that, you see flow variables all over the place.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
That's very
right.
true.
Okay. So there is another question. And this question refers to a group loop. So there's a question, what is the best way to do a group loop if there are many variables? So there's also an example provided. So let's say there's a group loop by customer and we have 100,000 customers. So with Python, you can vectorize and then it's faster. But if you just do it in KNIME, what would be the efficient way if you have such a big loop?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's a good one.
Yes, that's a good question.
Actually,
I'm thinking.
I haven't used the group loop on that many columns.
Mm.
But column values or columns? So maybe I did not understand correctly. So you
So
have a lot of
values. So
values,
just
yeah.
column
like
values. So
a
one
loop
column
with many
with a-
iterations. At least that's also how I understood the question.
Maybe what I would do is to first put the customers into a chunk loop, pass it into chunks, then use the group loop. Maybe it's a more efficient way to do that.
Yes, maybe. Because
But-
if it's sorry.
Yeah, sorry to
Let's
finish
just
that, but
continue.
I haven't tried it on that many values before.
So maybe if you use the group, this is about the group node or the group loop node.
The group loop.
Group loop.
The group loop node. I think it's not a problem if you use that. So in that many unique values, because it will iterate on for 1,000 values, so 1,000 times. And I think it's better than if you just had the group node, the group by node to that original data set. So I think that's better to chunk that
Yeah.
with the group loop start node.
The chunk loop stuff.
Yeah. That's also
Too many loop nodes.
yes, we have.
All right. Now when we're talking about this group loops, many variables, would you say there is a limit for complexity? So yeah, is there any kind of limit which you can achieve when you work with flow variables?
I mean, there are some limits for sure, but they are kind of far away, I would say. If you can go to Berthold's space on the public, his public space on the KNIME Hub, you can check our solutions for the game of nodes. And there's going to be some pretty complex solutions. I think there is like a certain level of, like burden of complexity, but you can go very complicated. So put like thousands of nodes into Overflow. It's totally possible, and we did that a lot of times. So
I think they were quite complex, and it does not reach the limit.
Yeah. Also, if you introduce not just flow variables but loops as well, which is also part of the L2 courses, it's gonna just open up way more space to you to go into complexity.
I see. Another question, another best practice question. Here I'm also actually curious because I certainly do. Do you have a special name convention that you'd use to name flow variables? I certainly do that.
If it's a really big and complex workflow, then I have. If it's not a complex workflow, then I just okay, I named that anyway, so something like that.
And like if it's very complicated and big, I try to keep my workflow tidy, so filter the flow variables that I don't need anymore. But also keeping the name conventions, because later on it can be, and in a lot of times, and I suggest that to keep the name convention. I mean, like if you think that workflow gonna be small and you are certain that it's gonna be small, then it's all right. You don't do that. But trust me, like a lot of times when it's just gonna be a few nodes, and after like half an hour, you will find yourself with 500 nodes, and then later on it's gonna be, it's gonna be important to have proper name convention for variables.
Yeah, and the variable filter node, which came with the newest or late newest version, is I think a really big help, because before that node you had your flow variables, and you could just use components to encapsulate them. But now you can filter them, and you can tidy up your workflow. I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, it can become quite difficult at some point. So we got another question about loops. So if you are executing or running through a loop and it has many iterations, then of course it takes a long time. Is there a way to see kind of or log kind of which iteration the loop is currently in? So how can you track that?
Yes, you can track that, and I will try to show that to you. Yeah, okay. So if I'm here at the loop and I visit the group loop start node, then I do not click this execute button because it will execute the whole loop. I will execute the Excel writer, the node before the loop end, and after that, you can step into the loop one loop at a time. So if I just click that and click that again, you can see that one iteration has passed by.
Yeah.
We are at the second iteration at Austin. And if I click again, is the third iteration to Boston. And if I click just the execute button after the Excel writer has done its job, then it executes all the loops remaining.
But I think the question was about, do you know what iteration are you exactly at? And for that, if you let me,
Yes,
if you just click for the flow variables, maybe here, you can see the current iteration, and it's changing over the time when it's passing from one iteration to other. Currently, it's in the 9th iteration because it's starting from 0. So basically, if you click here to the flow variables tab, you can see what iteration the loop is currently at.
Nice. Cool. Okay. I would say one last question before we're running out of time. Do you have any, let's say, your most personal, your most favorite tip or trick you would like to share with the community when it comes to using flow variables?
I have one. So there is a loop, the table row to variable loop node. And I think that's a very cool node because it just takes a table and goes one row at a time and puts that row into flow variables. So the first row into flow variable, do the looping, then the second row to flow variables and do the looping. So if you have a table for 500 rows, you haven't used the table row to variable node without the loop. What Marty has showed, you will use the table row to variable loop start node, and it will start the loop to put each row into flow variables.
That's a good one.
Also, I have one which is I pretty like. If you're familiar with coding, you can put parameters or variables into TXT files or into any type of files, which you can just edit without touching the actual code. You can do that in KNIME. So basically, if you just put in a few values, a few things that you want to, or you want your client to adjust, or you just don't want to go into the workflow, you can just read it in, them as an Excel or CSV or whatever, and you can turn them into flow variables, which can make your workflow more automatized and more dynamic. So yeah, basically you can just put down certain values into an Excel and use them as a variable input.
Yes. That's also a very good trick. Nice. Okay. Yeah, having a look at the time, I think we have reached the end of the allocated time for the Q&A. Now, before I'm ending this webinar and release all of you, I just want to quickly jump back to the slides. And I just want to remind you about our next KNIME101 webinar for next month, which is with Hiroki Yoshida, where he will talk about KNIME in chemistry for beginners. So this is a very special learning session for chemists and life scientists. So if you are one of these two, or if you are just interested in chemistry, maybe, then you shouldn't miss that one. And then just a last note on Just Knime It, because I have mentioned it already in the introduction, the Just Knime It challenges we have. And I want to announce today that we are starting Just Knime It Season 4 actually today. So it is starting May 14, which is today. So if you are not familiar with that, Just Knime It is our weekly challenges that teach you different concepts. And if you are, participating regularly, we do have a leaderboard as well. And if you are participating in a lot of these challenges, you might even make it on the leaderboard, and you might even become one of the Just Knime It ninjas, which I believe you became one last season. So yeah, just go to knime.com/justknimeit. The challenge will be released, the first challenge will be released after this webinar, so this in the German time zone this afternoon. And because it's fitting this topic of today, the first challenge will be about flow variables. So everything you have learned in this webinar today, you can put into practice to solve the challenge. And on a similar note, we have also published today the Just Knime It Season 3 booklet. It's a free booklet available on the Knime Press, and it's just a collection of all the challenges from the Season 3. It's separated by required skill and difficulty level and covers different topics like data visualization, image processing, machine learning, and many, many more. And yeah, just go to the Knime Press page. There you find this booklet. You also find the Just Knime It booklets of Season 2 and Season 1. And you also find many, many other Knime Press books. They are all free for download. So yeah, check out the Knime Press page. And yeah, with that, we are at the end of this 4th episode of the Knime 101 webinar. Thanks again to our 2 mentors, our flow variable pros from Budapest. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting.
And thanks everyone for joining us for this session.